Part 2. Okay, so part 2. So when you are approaching someone with anorexia, one thing that's important to recognize is that this is this person's identity, and if this is how I identified myself, and you came up to me and said, "You need to stop what you're doing. You need to start eating," just imagine the panic and fear as if somebody had come up to you and said, you are no longer an American citizen. You have to stop working. You have to stop living here. And we're going to send you to a foreign country where you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you won't have any support, and you're basically nobody because nobody knows who you are. That is what it's going to come across like to somebody with anorexia, okay? So keep that in mind. Be very sensitive. And also keep in mind that most people with anorexia also, they do a lot of things that are selfless in a distorted mindset. However, there's a lot of accusations about people being selfish for having their eating disorder. And there may definitely be some kind of selfish behaviors, especially around the protection. But it is but to call somebody with an eating disorder selfish is misguided and pretty judgmental in my opinion, but people don't understand the disorder. People just automatically assume that, well, you're doing this because you're selfish, otherwise you would eat. That doesn't work. That kind of guilt and shame doesn't work, because deep down underneath everything, a person with anorexia has a very low self-esteem and depends heavily on the acceptance and opinions of others around them. And that core sense of identity of, I am myself, I am okay, and I'm okay with me, despite what other people think, that takes a long time to develop, and that is part of the recovery process. But it's difficult, and so the person with anorexia needs that support. On the other hand, living with somebody with an eating disorder is probably one of the most difficult disorders for family and loved ones to live through, because you're worried, you don't know what to do, and it's hard to watch a person suffer and basically live a life of self-destructive behavior patterns that are life-threatening. It is a life-threatening illness, and when there's nothing that you can do about it, because the person themselves wants to change, and even if it has to want to change. And so even if you force that person into a facility and force them to physical health, you cannot force that person to mental health until they're ready to change. And so what you have to do is just treat the person separate from the disorder. Okay, the person's not an eating disorder, and so you have to find everything else about that person to reinforce and to, don't compliment or criticize body size, whether big or small. Talk about weight loss, talk about appearance, find other attributes and other things that are interesting to that person, even if it's just a tiny thing, because you're so frustrated in that moment. The other thing is that you do have to protect your own personal boundaries and mental health and safety as well. So it's difficult to support someone with an eating disorder, and there are ways to set up boundaries around that. And one of the very tough boundaries that you may have to set is that if you are in a state that it is too much for you to handle, because an eating disorder is too much for a non-trained person to handle alone. It gets to the point that it is beyond anything that you can do to fix it, and a person, if at a certain point, will not, or may have a difficult time recovering without a specialized support team. So, if a person completely rejects your help and support time after time, and they're so into their disorder, really the only thing that you can do is to say, you know what, I am here for you when you want to change. This is difficult for me to watch, and I am not abandoning you, but right now this is, it's affecting my life too, and I care about you. So when you are ready to work on things, then please let me support you, but right now this is too much for me to handle, and so I need to back off a little bit. And it's a tough thing to say, it's a tough thing to hear, but it is okay to do that, okay? Unless you are a parent with a minor child, and then you are legally responsible to help that child, and to not do so could be considered medical neglect. And in that case, you do have the legal right to force that child into recovery. I guess force is kind of a odd term. You can put that child in a treatment center and even then they still have to want to change. But as a minor, you can do that. As an adult child, it's more difficult to do that. I mean, it's a lengthy court process, and in some cases people are successful in doing that. However, in most cases, you have to say, you're not rejecting the person, but you are rejecting the eating disorder, and you do have to be careful about how you do that, because a lot of times, you don't want the person to be shut off, but a lot of times when you give the person that space and you say, you know what, I'm here for you, when you want to go to a movie and talk about something, that you want to do something positive, I'll go with you. But you can't continue to live in the drama of the eating disorder. I don't know if I'm coming across clearly, because I don't want to come across like I'm trying to be cruel or anything like that, because I'm not. I'm definitely not. I've suffered from this myself, and I don't think that you should abandon somebody with an eating disorder, but I'm just saying that at some point you may have to set an emotional boundary where, these are the conditions in which I can interact with you, and so it may even be a compromise of when you can and when you can't. But you have to protect yourself, and by doing so, you actually, if you do so in a loving way, you actually make yourself more of a resource to that person, more of a safe person for that individual to talk to, because you have solid boundaries. They recognize that. They recognize that you're a supportive person and that you're not rejecting them. And even in the beginning, if they might feel rejected, if you continue to show that love and support and consistency, the odds are they will eventually come to you because you are a consistent person. Now, as far as the behaviors of anorexia, the good news is, all these terms like overexercise and undereating, a lot of the things that you do in life do not have to be permanently changed. You just have to reframe your mind around it. So yeah, you may have to eat more, but guess what? Like, I went and ran the whole Grand Canyon this weekend, rim to rim to rim, 48 miles, all in one day. If I was doing that in an eating disordered mindset, I would be doing it to punish myself and to isolate myself and to tell myself how much stronger I was than everybody else that couldn't do it, but also what a horrible person I was because I was too fat or because I hadn't burned enough calories or something like that. As a without an eating disorder, I'm doing that because it's an adventure and I love it, and I love to see how far my body can go, and in the process I'm finding out what my body needs and respecting it and refueling my body and figuring out my calorie needs and my energy needs and hydration needs and having a great time and enjoying the world around me. So I want you to keep that in mind, that when you identify yourself with an eating disorder so much, and sometimes it's reinforced by people trying to help you by saying that, hey, all this exercise and everything is eating disorder. Exercise itself, by itself, is not eating disorder. It's your mindset around it. So keep that in that mind, that as you're going through recovery, that you can start to reframe this, and eventually you can develop a healthy attitude around these activities. And it may take you a while. It may not be in the beginning something that you're able to handle, but over time this can happen. And so It's not all or nothing. You're not giving up everything just because you're in recovery. So that's what I would say to you about anorexia. And I hope you have a good week.